Take the center cap off before you take the tire off. 22mm socket. I'm going to loosen up the flex hose banjo bolt. That way it's easy to take off when the caliper's hanging free. 11mm wrench. Just break it free so that you can do it easily. Make sure you have your catch basin there. There's 2 mounting bolts for the caliper bracket to the rear differential. 18mm wrench or socket. I'm going to take those completely off. Now before I take it completely out, I'm going to take the rest of that banjo bolt off the flex hose. I'm going to leave the banjo bolt in it so minimal will leak out. Let's place the pry bar between the caliper bracket and the rotor. Then you can just give it a twist off. So I personally like to dismount the new caliper even though it's new. 18mm wrench holding the inside, 17mm socket. Take this guide pin out, slider pins, or I like to remove it, that way I can take my caliper, set that aside. Now I can prepare my caliper bracket properly. Comes with new slider tins, and I like to make sure that the slide pins are lubed up properly. So let's first put our tins in. You're going to take some caliper grease, put a light coat so that rust does not build up. And then you take your caliper tins, you're going to line them up. And push these pins right down in. Do the same to the other side. I personally do not like to put grease on the tops where the pads slide. Now I'm going to check this guide pin to make sure there's plenty of caliper grease in there. Just take a screwdriver, something easy, don't damage the boot. Slide it out. I might add just a little bit more. Dry pins cause erratic brake pad wear. Make sure it spins all the way around. When installing the pin, make sure that boot goes up on that little lip to lock it in so that the has no weight, any road dirt or anything can get in there, and then just compress it back in. Do the same to the other side. Now I'm going to remove the old pads because I'm reusing them. So when you're reusing your old pads and rotor, just replacing a caliper, make sure you see the way these were placed in. So I know that's the outer pad, and this is going to be the inner pad. Before installing the old caliper bolts, make sure you take a wire brush and clean out all the old factory Loctite, and then we're going to reapply a new coat of Loctite. Now with the bolts cleaned, I added a little bit of medium strength thread locker and just let that go right in the threads all the way around on both bolts. Now I take my caliper bracket, line it up. I always start the bolts by hand. I'm just going to bottom both of them out because there's a torque spec to this. So the caliper torque specs is 122 foot-pounds for these 2 mounting bolts. So this is the outer pad because it has the 2 markings where the guide went for the caliper. I'm just going to line that right up. And then the inner has where the piston sat, and I'm going to line that one right up. Now I can attach the actual caliper, put the pin bolts in the pins. Just hand tight because I'm going to torque them to manufacturer's spec. 17 millimeter socket, and the torque spec is 28 foot-pounds. If you find the inner slider spinning, you're going to put a 18 millimeter wrench on there. Hold that. Do the same on the bottom bolt. Now we can transfer over the flex hose on the new caliper with the new banjo bolt and new copper washers. It's very important that you use the new bolt washers so it seats properly and doesn't leak. So one copper washer goes on the new bolt seat that way. Then we're going to take the old banjo bolt out. They're both 11 millimeter wrench. You need a flathead screwdriver sometimes. It helps take these washers off. They get pretty corroded in there. Now you're ready to take the old banjo bolt out. Make sure that the old copper washer is on the old bolt. Make sure you have a clean surface on both sides of the flex hose. Run the new bolt through. Make sure it's clean over here. Now you're going to apply the new copper washer and then line it right up with the caliper. Once it's seated, you do this all by hand and feel. Make sure you seat these copper washers. Now we're going to check our master cylinder, make sure it's topped off. Once it is, you can come back here, take this protective boot off. You're going to reuse that. And then we'll open the bleeder screw and let it gravity bleed. That is a 10 millimeter wrench. Set the catch basin right below it. Snug it up. Put the boot on. Clean the area down with parts clean. As you can see, you want to check your master level. Top it off with the proper fluid. This says .3. So once you're done gravity bleeding, you see no air coming out of that bleeder screw and you close it off. Come in and pump your brakes up until you have a nice firm pedal. Start the vehicle up and it'll sink a little bit due to the brake booster, and hold it steady and make sure that it doesn't sink anymore. If it doesn't, you're ready to go. If it does, bleed all over it in. Reinstall the tire. Now you can torque your tire to 140 foot-pounds. When installing the center cap, make sure you line the valve stem marking up with it on the rim.